Hello and welcome to this session on solutions for powering sustainable agriculture. I'm so delighted to see you. Thank you so much for being here today. I always think that the presence of you underlines the importance of this topic. Now, my name is Haja Yacoubi. I'm a former United Nations youth delegate for the Netherlands, co-founder of a network called 2100. But above all, I'm very delighted to be your moderator for today. Now, as I already said, I think your presence underlines the importance of this issue, right? I don't think I need to tell you, but I will nonetheless. When we look at the urgency of bringing the energy and food world closer together, it is an undeniable fact that we need more action, right? We see how much so many of our agri and food systems still rely on fossil fuels and how fast we need to transition to a system in which we're bringing renewable energy to that and adding to the food security and livelihoods of people in that respect as well. So in this session, we will be focusing on questions like how can we accelerate the concept of renewables into this agri-food world? How can we bring about solutions? How do we scale them up? Lots of things that we'll be speaking about. Now, when you're talking about interesting things, it very often occurs that you have your own ideas about it. So to everyone here in the room, but also to all those of you watching online, if at any point there is something that is being said that really resonates with you, or if you have a burning question that you really want to ask, submit them in the live chat if you're watching online. And if you're here in the room, just raise your hand and then one of our lovely people from the organization will rush to you with a microphone. Isn't that lovely? Well, with that being said, I think that one of the most important things before you start a good discussion is also to have a good basis for it. And let it now just be the case that we have an incredible keynote speaker to start this day off. She will tell us more about the urgency and importance of bringing that energy and food nexus closer together. So I am going to ask you for your biggest round of applause, the CEO of Power for All, Cristina Schirera. Give it up for her.
That was very energetic. You're definitely in the right place. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I just want to take a minute and acknowledge, in fact, a man who is my boss on the board of Power for All, Kande Yumkela, who you'll be hearing from in a few minutes. This event, yes, we owe him so much. But this event was actually his brainchild many, many years ago. So it's been amazing to see this transformation in terms of size and scope. Also, I think we owe that a lot to Kande's background, which includes expertise and a PhD, in fact, in an agriculture specialty, which we'll hear more about that in just a few minutes. But first about Power for All, just so you know who's up here today. So Power for All is a global campaign that's focused on accelerating the end of energy poverty. And because most energy poverty is in semi-rural, semi-urban areas, we in fact focus on accelerating adoption of decentralized renewable energy. So that's rooftops, that's rooftop solar, that's mini grids. And in fact, that is increasingly a group of technologies that are known as productive use technologies, or really renewables-based technologies for agriculture. So now that you understand that our real focus is about making sure as many people have access to the quality of life and opportunity that comes with reliable, affordable, and clean energy, let me talk to you a little bit about our focus on powering agriculture. So I think most of us know and have heard a lot already today about the twin challenges of food security, or SDG 2, and modern energy solutions, SDG 7, getting out there to as many people as possible, but yet they remain some of the most intractable problems facing us today. The climate crisis that we're seeing at this nexus of energy and agriculture is due to a pretty complex system that over the years has really developed its value additions in the global north and leaving a lot of the global south out. And what I want to just preface all of my remarks about is the particular numbers that we need to be paying attention to today, which is that by mid-century, there will be 10 billion people on this planet. And at that same time, we're expecting to see a 60% demand increase for food, and 50% of that global population explosion is going to be on the continent of Africa. So you can see why we're going to spend a fair amount of time today talking about how we bring reliant situations to the continent itself, because without significant change, the food system we have today will fail to both meet the food demands of the future and is not going to do anything to keep us below 1.5 degrees Celsius. So with that, just a few other numbers, and then I'll get into the particular point of view that Power for All represents. But it's today's $8 trillion international agribusiness industry that includes production all the way to disposal that's a core driver of climate change. And it's really only been this year where we start hearing people recognize that. So on top of the fact that 80% of the ag system is powered by fossil fuels, it also accounts for 1/3 of total GHG emissions. So climate change can't be contained by lines. We all know that, right? Even though there's still some stalwarts who want to try to prove us otherwise. But it's not boundaries on a map. Vulnerability grows in one region, and our entire food system is made more fragile. The modern system is both a cause and effect of climate change, as displayed here. And it's the extensive supply chains, the dependency on fossil fuels, and the inequitable access to the means of improving production that are at the core of the problem. But if we look a little bit closer and we try to understand why it's so important that we center on Africa and we center on supporting the global South in an energy transition for agriculture, it's charts like these that really help drive the point home. The 10 most climate vulnerable and least resilient countries are in Africa. And that's where millions rely on agriculture for jobs, but also lack access to that clean energy that we were talking about to actually power a more resilient and profitable food future. So among these regions, Africa, as Power for All sees it, really is ground zero. There's vast arable lands, booming populations, but yet still the lowest rates of energy access anywhere in the world. And so at the same time, what if we started thinking about Africa as not just a climate problem, an entity that is going to suffer the most, but what if it could benefit the most as well and play a central role to a food system transformation? So as mentioned, the continent is home to a lot of natural resources, but it's the inequities that have been ingrained in this international food system that have led to agricultural dependence, limits to access to energy, inequitable access to tools, and also finance for farmers and co-ops to adopt some of these new technologies that lead to the problem that we have where the global north is doing value addition and leaving so much of Africa behind. With over 600 million people without power on the continent alone, decades of compounded income inequality, and a growing climate fragility, the African continent has been systemically prevented from realizing its full agricultural and human potential. But it's Power for All's supposition that decentralized renewables can change that. So agriculture, as I mentioned, is both the main economic activity across the continent and also a great source for jobs. Smallholder farmers, though, nobody has really started to realize until the last few years on a global stage how critical they can be to a really powerful transition in agriculture. So smallholders are responsible for almost 1/3 of the total food production, and the farms and cooperatives have the ability to sell locally. That can help reduce imports, which are responsible for a great number of the impacts of climate and a major source of both emissions and institutionalized dependence. So given the critical role in achieving food self-sufficiency and mitigating emissions, a wholesale effort to bring decentralized renewable technologies to smallholder farmers on Africa is really the charge so much of us need to answer. So just to put a slightly finer point on it, Power for All's analysis, just released in September, reveals that placing DRE at the forefront of mechanization for agriculture can yield a 10% reduction in the continent's GHGs while driving economic gains in the billions. That's right, you heard that, the billions. And so when we did this analysis, which you can find on our website in our recently shared call to action, the total economic impact encompasses both the additional revenues for farmers as well as overall potential savings on diesel. So please go to powerforall.org and download this report to learn more about the data and assumptions that go into this analysis. But in addition to these fundamental issues and the need to accelerate adoption of these technologies is another piece of information that I think is critical for all of us to know. We took a deep look at the agricultural transformation plans of all the countries in Africa. And great, most of them had them, 96%. But in fact, what we found in these plans is that there's only half of them that mention the importance of energy access, and almost a quarter that mention decentralized renewables. And so for us, this is a huge opportunity, because how can you get support from the government if you don't have it called out in a plan? How can governments get support and funding for a new technology or a transformation in a system if it isn't written and part of a national agenda? So with that, we've got a few suggestions for an energy transition for agriculture. Despite SDG 2 and SDG 7's intertwinement, the benefit of the transition has really largely been overlooked until these last few years. And so because the modern food system is responsible for so much of climate change, we also think that it can be a great solution. And the part that we want to focus on is the role of fuels and power in this system. So if we decarbonize the entire value chain, which includes the energy used to power it, we can see some pretty transformational progress. So with governments, we would ask governments to really reward integration between the ag and energy parts of the government, and oftentimes needing to bring in water or climate change offices. But it's only through reducing those silos and creating integrated policies, like in the agricultural transformation plans, that we'll see an effective change. So we do want to see an emphasis on including an awareness raising of decentralized renewables, such as solar-powered cold storage or solar-powered water pumps, within the country's firmament. So that includes policies, but that also includes incentive structures, not unlike what we see in India, which has been so successful with its Kusum scheme. Then again, for investors, and I know there's a few in the room, in fact, one who will be up here on the panel later, we do want to encourage that there is an alignment of climate money and climate action. One of the problems that exists today is that out of all the climate money that's available, less than 4% goes to agriculture. But yet it's the source of a third of GHG emissions, so what are we doing? We really need a transformation along the entire capital stack, whether that's concessional finance, like grants, or whether it's investments expecting a return. And then finally, MFIs as well. We really need to use some of that capital to de-risk the role of DRE and get more MFIs on board, because that's how most smallholders are able to access support and investment in these technologies. Next for farmers, and, next for farmers. Right. We work with several farmers in several countries. In particular, we have active Powering Ag programs in Ethiopia, Uganda, and India. And what we've seen is they don't need an explanation about what climate change is, because they experience it every day. What they need are solutions. And so for us, working directly with farmers and then leveraging that word of mouth and excitement goes a long way to beginning a market system transformation. And then finally, just a quick note about what the entire ecosystem can do. And by that, I mean the companies, the private sector actions, the CSOs, the trade associations, and even the people in the audience today. We need to include renewable energy in our understandings and definitions of regenerative agriculture and agroecology. We need, in fact, to promote more consumer awareness and support for quality standards. We don't want to poison a new market with poor quality knockoff products that end up poisoning the market after all. So just in closing, the call today, then, is a call for an energy transition for agriculture, which by its nature, which includes supporting smallholder farmers and further distributing energy resources, will result in a juster transition. The Global North has to recognize the contributions that we've made and stop funding things that lead to deforestation, support reforestation, and in fact, encourage localized supply chains for food. And through that intention and through that collective action, we do believe that we can achieve power for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please, a big round of applause for Christina. Christina, you will join us. Please do join us here. And thank you so much for shedding light on those facts. I think on the one hand, they're very confrontational, right? I mean, at the very beginning, the graph that it's 80% of agribusiness globally that is still powered by fossil fuels. The agriculture transformation plans, 56% that doesn't include energy access. So I think you very neatly showcased what still needs to happen, where we stand. And then at the same time, when I hear you speak at the end, I'm like, there are the solutions. They're right here. They've just been presented. So how do we all collectively come together to put them into action? Thank you so much for shedding light on that. We will continue this conversation, of course, and we'll do that with a stellar lineup of speakers. So again, I'm going to ask for your enthusiasm, your energy. If you get the joke, you made it as well. Your energy to welcome the following people on the stage. The first person, I don't think I have to introduce him. He's a bit of a celebrity around here, I've seen. But can we please give a big round of applause to the chairman of the Presidential Initiative on Climate Change, Renewable Energy and Food Security from Sierra Leone, Mr. Kande Yumkela. Please give it up for him. Then, welcome. Thank you so much, welcome. Then also a very warm welcome to CEO and partner of Voltaris, Mr. Cornelius Pett. Please, also a big round of applause for him. We go on to the head of Sustainable Food Systems from Ireland, Mr. David Butler. And then joining us online, so joining us virtually, it is also my pleasure to welcome here today the Executive Director of Grow Asia, Mrs. Beverly Postma. If I'm not mistaken, she should be able to pop up on the screen with us now. Yes, there she is. Welcome. Now, I will sit down with you. Welcome to all of you. So to the audience, we have agreed to just, keep it low-key and use first names. So if you're thinking, what a rude girl, calling them by their first name, we have made an agreement, so it's okay. I want to start perhaps with you, Kande, because we just heard Christina speak about what some of these major obstacles and bottlenecks are that we're facing when we're talking about bringing the agri and food world closer to that of energy. If you were listening to it, you're reflecting, what would you say are some of the biggest bottlenecks, the most pressing ones that we need to tackle, and how would we tackle them? Oh, and I'm so sorry, the microphones are on the table.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be back. Madam Haidara called me the grandfather because I made the mistake of saying I started Vienna Energy Forum 16 years ago. So I'm happy to be back and to see the great job you guys are doing, and even better than what we did 16 years ago.
Yeah.
Now I'm in government. I've been in parliament as well.
Yeah.
I think one of the key bottlenecks for now I see is the lack of joined-up thinking. The energy minister has his own agenda. The agriculture minister has their own. Nobody wants to talk about climate, especially in our neighborhood, because we say we are not causing emissions. So the rest of us are saying we are not causing it, but we're paying for it.
Right.
So you need that joined-up thinking. You need the political will to drive coherent policy making.
Yeah.
That it is joined-up thinking, you need the policies to be coherent and mutually supportive.
Right.
Because in our case, sometimes you have the land laws saying one thing, and then the agro minister is also dealing something else with land use. So they are not interconnected. We don't see them as interlinked. So, but of course, finally, it's about investments. It's about honesty.
Right.
It's about the rest of the world being honest. That Africa has the biggest lungs of the world today.
Yeah.
We absorb more carbon than the Amazon today. We still have 60% of the available arable land uncultivated to feed the 9 billion people when you are my age.
Yeah.
So, and then we're sitting on the critical minerals you need for the global energy transition.
Yeah.
In some cases, 30, 40%.
Yeah.
We're sitting on those minerals. So we Africans absorb the carbon that others create. We Africans need the resources to really solve the global, our own problems. But we're not seeing the investments. Less than 3% of renewable energy investments come to Africa.
Yeah.
Yet we have about 40, 50% of the renewable energy resources. So it is this injustice, this lack of honesty. Somebody said it this morning. We go to COP meetings, new promises, new arrangements, but each time we go back to the next COP, it's code red. Others did not reduce their emissions.
Yeah.
But we are supposed to be holier than everybody. We must transition fast. So we asked the question in Africa, are we transitioning when we don't have enough power, as she said?
Right.
And, but yet people are coming to us needing all the minerals we have to build the batteries, the solar panels. Maybe UNIDO should step in and say, hey, but they can build those batteries for you now. They can have those power sources to power agriculture and growth and wealth creation. And the final point is which Christina touched. We have now a new African narrative. We say climate positive growth. We have the green assets, we have the minerals, we have the population. We can lead this revolution. We're victims, but we don't want to have a victim mentality.
Right.
We want to grow.
We
want to make your
change.
batteries.
Yeah,
but at the same time, we want to power our food systems.
Absolutely.
And our manufacturing.
Yeah, and thank you so much for shedding light on that. Thank you. Yeah, we can definitely have a round of applause for that. I also love how you called it honesty, because I think that's at the very center of it, right? It's about the nature of these dynamics and these power dynamics that we're trying to keep in place, whereas indeed it is, I mean, who can sit in that driver's sort of seat of change? It is the African continent with what they can do to really leverage this transition that we need to make. David, I wanted to move over to you because Kande just mentioned as a very first point that some of the most important things is also finding each other and not staying in our own bubbles and, you know, doing everything in silos. It's a common point that we often hear, and yet we're still not living it. I mean, from your background with the work that you do in Ireland as well, you're working together with lots of different countries. What do you think is needed to ensure that we cooperate better together in bringing these two worlds together?
That's exactly what we need, as Kande said, and it's the same in developed world, it's the same in the global south. This is what we're here under a food systems banner, and this is what food systems thinking is all about. It's about changing the way we approach these problems, changing the way we design our solutions. Christina mentioned about all those beautiful strategies that every country has, right?
Yeah.
They all have them. Strategy is like 10% of the designing the strategy is like 10% of the issue. Implementation is 90%.
Wow.
And throughout those processes in terms of design, implementation, review, understanding what's gone right and what's gone wrong, changing the way we're thinking, changing the way we're trying to break down these silos between, and you said it yourself, the power dynamics. So trading power is really the key issue. I see it. I come from also a government background.
Yeah.
So I was hoping you might talk to somebody else first. So two government people. But I see it ourselves, whereby our traditional domains in food and agriculture, we now have to trade. We now have to bring in Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Climate Change, Ministry of Health. And so people are going, oh, we didn't used to have to talk to those guys, but we do. We're beginning to understand that we do now. And it's the same. It's at national level. It's at sub-national level, and this goes down to community level.
Right.
Where if we do that and we begin to do that, then we can create those interconnections, or we can leverage the power of the interconnections that are there, internally in our own food system, but also between food and other sectors like energy.
Right, and if I can just go a step back, when you mentioned trading power dynamics, can we make that very tangible? What are we talking about? What would that look like?
I think it begins to look like processes where you're doing that design work or that implementation work together, maybe with people that you didn't traditionally bring into the room.
Right.
So you've got the private, the public, the researchers, the academics, the environmentalists, the people who are doing the monitoring and control, the people who are responsible for deciding what happens with public money, but you also need the private sector in there. Yeah. And they're in a process whereby you're trying to create a shared vision.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not necessarily entirely consensus all the time. It's about compromise, it's about communication and understanding, and it's about eventually trying to get to those shared things.
And that is hard to do. That's why we don't do it.
And it's hard because it requires honesty, because if you bring people that you normally don't bring in, I always think, well, why don't you bring them in? Perhaps there is a painful message that we don't want to see. Thank you so much for shedding light on that. Beverly, I want to go to you. Hi, if you're here on the screen with us again. So we just talked about cooperation, but one of the other things that was mentioned by Kande as well as a big issue is investments. Now, I know that within your role in Grow Asia, you also do a lot with the role of investing in, bringing, for example, the agri and energy world more closer together, but just in essence, accelerating this transition. What do you think is the role of investment here? Why is it still not going fast enough? And do you see any potential formats of financing that might help here?
Thank you so much. I hope you can all hear me. And yes. Hello from Singapore. I'm sitting in one of the investment capitals of the world, and I've been living in Asia for the last 16 years. And boy, is it an exciting time to talk about these three topics in the same room: energy, investments, and agriculture. And those three words are huge in Asia right now. I've spent the last 3 days at the Asia Pacific Agri-Food Innovation Summit, which is the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Singapore's thematic. It's their annual gathering of the world's investors and solution providers for transitioning to a more sustainable future in agri and food. And what we're seeing is there's no shortage of innovation. We're living in the center of the most innovative space in the world for developing new technologies.
Right.
The problem we have is that those technologies are not reaching the communities and the small businesses that are producing the world's food. 80% of food, as we know, is produced in this region by 70 million smallholder farmers. And they are not unaware of the need to transition to renewable energy or to more efficient farming practices, but they lack the working capital, the finance to make that transition.
Right.
And that's a failure of investment innovation. We've innovated the technology, but we haven't innovated the investment system. So Grow Asia was born as from unusual parents. We're a joint venture between the World Economic Forum and the 10 ministers of agriculture of the ASEAN nations, the Southeast Asian nations, with the premise that we have to bring public and private solutions together, not just in technology and innovation, but in investment as well. We need to bring capital flows together so that technical assistance, working capital, the lending environment is designed for these very small businesses.
Right. And when you say we have to bring these flows together, why is it in the first place that they're not merged? Because I hear you and I fully agree. And at the same time, I think, my God, I think everyone in this room fully agrees, and nobody would disagree with that logic. So what is it that has been blocking it then?
Well, I think this room has already discussed many of the barriers. The barriers in Asia are no different to the barriers in the rest of the global south. We're still borrowing solutions from the global north and expecting them to work in the global south.
Right.
And in agriculture, the finance mechanisms that are designed to lend to big business and to consolidated agricultural practice, those lending solutions are not going to work for hundreds of millions of tiny businesses. The risk is too big, and we haven't found a way of reducing that risk.
Right.
Capital flows tend to work aligned to the least risk, and that's the nature of the market. But the good news is there is philanthropy, there is public funding, and there is concessional capital when deployed together.
That can be powerful as well in transitioning.
And that's what we're doing, is creating these loan mechanisms that are de-risked and can reach the small farmer.
Yeah, I love that, and honestly commending you for the work, because I think it is so needed. Cornelius, if I can look at you, I mean, listening to all of this, and even when Beverly says it's the risk aversion almost of not doing it, there's a part of my brain that goes like, my God, the biggest risk that we have is not doing it. Even if we just want to talk in financial terms, if we are going to be super like, let's leave all our morals outside the door, pure financially, that's also a super big risk for so many things, and we're talking stranded assets. So like investing in sort of this transition, why do you think that we're still at that 3% that was mentioned earlier as well by Christina when it comes to renewables?
Yeah, okay. Probably first I should give a bit of background what we're doing at Voltares. I'm the rookie here in this group. I'm in the field of renewable energies only 18 months, and it all started with a promise to my previous team. I built an e-commerce company, and I promised the team 1 million tons of carbon I will offset for all of them as a kind of thank you for the business we built previously. And that 1 million tons then led to the creation of a setup which is now doing renewable energy projects. We also do venture investments. And we decided quite early on to be as climate impactful as possible. So we put climate efficiency before financial efficiency because we can use our own funds. And practically, I felt a bit on the hot seat. I was doing the math in my head. I think we're now doing more than between 5 to 10% of the capital deployed so far is already deployed in Africa. So we're better than the 3% or the 4% you mentioned before. 3 was, I think. We have almost 20%, which is dedicated to the agricultural sector. So we're also better than the 4%, but we're not as good as the 31% would suggest. And what is holding us back when doing the investments is practically also a couple of things we heard before. We are, let's say, looking for investments which are not totally distributed. One of the problems you really have is that agriculture is a super, small-scale business. So any product that you would like to roll out is facing, let's say, a distribution challenge.
Can you make that more specific when you say distribution? By the way, maybe it's good to mention the microphones are a little sensitive.
I try to keep it.
But when you say distribution, can you just make that tangible for us?
The opposite of it is building a large solar field in Georgia, as we do it now in Eastern Europe. There is a 40 million investment that you can do in one go. If you deploy solar-driven water pumps, you need literally thousands of these water pumps in all different kinds of locations to only come to a fraction of the sum of it.
Right.
So that's the problem we're facing. We're doing investments, but we have to do them in so many different locations at the same time. That's one of the reasons why Off-Grid Europe has now an arm which is Off-Grid Africa. This is one of the key, let's say, activities that we're financing from our Voltares side. And only through a strong local presence we're able to do these investments. The other thing is exactly the blend of finance we heard before. In fact, it's very difficult to assign clearly the roles because it's almost as if it's a reverse logic now. Previously, I thought that investors are there to carry the risk, but I now see that capital markets increasingly push people to do risk-free investments, which I find a bit of insane because I think the entrepreneur, the investor, should carry the risk and then use debt or institutional money in order to leverage it. But many of the financial, let's say, constructions are working the other way around. They simply say, well, we would like to take the risk so that the private money can move in and work in a risk-free environment.
Right, that is actually an interesting dynamic.
We would like to do it differently, so we're really as a risk-seeking, because we also think that with risk come the opportunity, and not only the financial opportunity, but also the climate impact simply grows if you dare to go into regions or into I'd say, investments that are overlooked opportunities.
I see you nodding, Christina. Is that something that you recognize or that's familiar to you, that resonates?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it does, and I just I appreciate
Can
you
we?
being so direct, and you're right to feel in the hot seat. Basically, anybody who's holding on to capital that can help make this world a better place should feel in the hot seat. And yet, I am sensitive to what you're talking about in terms of the risk, and but it is systemic. You know, at this point, the decentralized energy sector has been around for almost 20 years. So there was an original sort of version of it in the 70s that left a bunch of solar on rooftops in developing countries and people disappeared. But now what we have is a very effective ecosystem. And in fact, when we have several reports now, including from the IEA, that says that the majority of new connections are going to be coming from decentralized renewables. So I guess for me, you know, beyond what the market's shown, beyond the, you know, CAGR, the compound annual growth rate, you know, what else do investors need to stop thinking about this as a risky sector?
Yeah. Well,
it's a question.
We're really kind of a very atypical investor because we just invest our own money, and that sets us really apart from people that collect other people's money, because there comes so much more strings attached.
But you might be talking to the 3% investor, so to say. What is it that they say? Why?
Yeah, well, the other thing that is probably holding people back is just, I say, a basic level of being familiar with the space in which they operate. And that's, we were looking really into the aspect of climate efficiency. It was so striking for us that we have to move beyond our comfort zone for investing, because we were simply seeing so many great opportunities if we move outside of investing in the EU, outside of investing into the United States. So probably what helps us a lot is that we had the ambition to be as climate impactful as possible, because that naturally draws you into regions which usually investors wouldn't feel so comfortable with.
Yeah.
So.
No, but I think that's a very valuable one, right? If we just, and I think there's even a case to be made about the financial element of it, but I hear what you say. If we have a system of investment in which we only sort of quantify and weigh out the financial value that it can create or destroy, and we're not counting in the social value, the environmental value, that is a system that should have been outdated such a long time ago, and it would make for a totally different sort of, investment landscape, but also a different world ultimately that we would then live in. I am also turning to the audience because you've been listening for a little bit now. So far, are there any questions for our panel that we have? If not, don't worry, because I do have a question for you. Oh, there is actually a hand here, and let's take it first indeed, and there's another there. And then in the meantime, I will also ask you a question. Please go ahead.
My name is Bahaj, and I'm from the University of Southampton, UK. This conference or this forum is about solutions.
Yeah.
I really like to see that solutions being thought about here.
Yeah.
And for the last 10 years, coming to these things, and finances are locking everything. There's nothing happened about finance, because finance is kept where people have the money.
Yeah.
Nothing going to development, nothing going to developing countries.
Right. And
there are barriers built up by the financing entities.
Right.
So how would the panel think about unlocking the finance so that next year we have tangible projects? Yeah.
Maybe, can I pose this one to you, Kande? Also, because, I mean, you have seen sort of the long landscape of the Vienna Energy Forum, but also with regards to solutions, I think it's a good bridge. What should happen?
Well, I have a concrete case, and thanks for sending a Voltaire team to Sierra Leone last week. So I have a concrete case, so I pose it here. I'm giving the three portfolios: climate change, renewable energy, and food systems. Yeah. We're just finishing our food systems strategy now. Yeah. So the political will is there. My president is fully in. I'm helping to drive that. So here's what I have. I want to do 30 to 40 mini-grids, but differently. We have 100 mini-grids now, the largest in the 4 countries in the Mano River Union. Yeah. We've had 80 years of experience. But these only had 36 kilowatts. It was for lighting. So here's my concrete proposition, and we want to work with you and investors.
You've started something.
so that next year I can come back and challenge Madam Hydra and Mr. Muller that I made a proposal here. I want to see follow-up. We're trying to do 2 things now. One is decentralized power, but embedded in the agroecologies we've identified for the food strategy. So instead of 36 kilowatts, I'm looking at mini grids that can do 200, 300 to 1 megawatt to power irrigation, power the rice mill, power the flour mill. So what we guarantee you is direct political will. We'll identify the lands, we'll identify the space, come in and invest whatever you need, incentives tell us. Proposition 1.
Deal or no
Proposition
deal, Cornelius,
Proposition 2, because I hired him in UNIDO, so I'm going to pose it now for the agro team. All my friends are over here. I was much younger then, right? I'm asking you to, I like what you did in Ethiopia, so I want to create 2 agro-industrial zones. And my president said, what the heck are those?
Agro-industrial zones.
I said, UNIDO will tell you, because they did a good job in Ethiopia. Those ones, again, I just need to do 2, feasibility study, but embedded energy solution. Those zones, agro-industries will not run without affordable, reliable power. I know today you can already do 70 megawatts solar within 18 months. Within 18 months, yeah, in my country. I know it is doable. World Bank is trying to do 40 now. So 2 propositions. One is distributed, and if I don't know how to do it, Christina will show me. I have an investor sitting, so we make a deal before we leave this stage. And I give you another one.
I do need to know. I do need to know.
So this is something in 2 years.
Wait, first, can I go to, because I would love to, I want to see if we have a deal, if something happened here.
We should do it here in plain public. I'll with that.
Oh, yes. Yeah, let's go to David in a bit.
So we do have, as you were saying, the political will. I think we have the technical skill. Is that right? So, Christiane, you need to nod.
Okay.
So Christiane is the CEO of Off-Grid. So she knows whether we can really go up to the 400, 300, 400 kilowatt hours of storage and power. But it seems we can. So it should be also our pleasure really to look into the project and finance it. Of course, we need, on top of our equity, we need a bit of other people's money, but that should be easy to organize, given exactly your endorsement and your willingness to push forward. So really, next year, put me again on the hot seat, and let's see what we got something.
Gentlemen, please, you should shake hands. We should, solidify it, please. Yes. Okay. David, can we get you in for some blended fun? I'm just kidding. I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you want to respond? Hearing all of that, I was going to say, are you going to contribute to blended financing?
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it's all there, but isn't this the point? This is part of the point. Here you have Cande offering a package of a solution, which is, if you don't mind me saying, I mean, it's because our national systems have these gaps that we come up with these solutions like agro-industrial zones, like processing parks, like free trade zones, because we don't have the ideal at the national level. So this becomes the locus of investment, right? Yeah. And the only other solutions that that we encounter that are beginning to make progress are around things like where you have aggregation, where you have producer groups, cooperatives, where you have clusters at community level, whereby you're bringing together, because as the money guys can't deal with the millions of smallholders. Yeah. They can't deal with the millions of deals because they have their due diligence and their risk and so on, as we're hearing. The cost of the interest rates, and we see this in Africa, are still way, 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 way too high at commercial level. So thinking about all those entrepreneurs, all those startups and farmers who want to invest, it's phenomenally difficult. Yeah. So at least seeing this gives great hope, because from this then you build your links to your producer groups, links to outgrower schemes, you have your processing, you can achieve your standards, you have your roads, your power, your water, and you have your ability then to apply the capability building in a more efficient way. Yeah, absolutely. Also, I see on our screen here that Beverly is nodding vigorously. You agree? Is this something that you recognize also, this dynamic here on the stage?
Yeah, I mean, every time someone mentions the system approach, I nod, because that's what's missing. We can't just blend the finance, we have to blend the solutions, and the solutions need to be context specific. Every crop and every country needs a specific solution, a solution of mixed actors and a solution of mixed of mixed financing. If you take rice is 95% of the world's rice is produced here in Asia. It is contributing up to 15% of emissions. We spend a lot of time working with investors to find big bets.
Right.
And investors more and more want to find big bets that are not just betting on the financial return on investment, but they need to stack up against the environment return on investment.
Right.
So if you're one of the challenges, and this may be controversial in this audience, one of the challenges is that the adoption of renewable energy as a best bet is not always a solution if it's adopted in isolation. If, for instance, you use solar pumps in rice, which is one of the most successful uses of renewable energy in Asia, if you use solar pumps to just fuel a traditional flooded a low emission option,
right,
then you're not actually contributing to emissions reduction. You're just sustaining an unsustainable environment. So we have to make sure that the solution for energy is embedded into other farming practice changes and shifts in farming practice, like the reduction of burning and the reduction and a move to alternate wetting and drying, which together will create a far bigger impact on emissions than just the renewable energy shift. So we need
do you have an
conveners.
example? Do you have an example
Yeah.
of where that was done very properly, Beverly?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a work in progress. I think this is the challenge. We don't have any fantastic scalable solutions. There's lots of pilots that haven't scaled. And the reason why pilots haven't scaled is because the lack of convening power to break down all of these silos. You have to really work hard to put the end-to-end value chain, the governments, the companies, the off-takers, the banks, all in the same solution. And that's hard.
Yeah.
And that needs conveners. So the biggest opportunity I'm seeing at the moment is in Vietnam. Vietnam, led by the Ministry of Agriculture, has allocated 1 million hectares of rice. And they're going to pledge to convert that 1 million hectares to low emissions rice with some fairly big targets. Now, to do that, they need to mobilize all of the actors that are involved in the rice production chain, and they need to mobilize finance for the smallholder farmers to be able to purchase better quality seed, to move to solar pumps, and to move to different irrigation systems. So what we're doing is convening all of those actors through a blended finance model to incentivize, to make sure there's a win for everyone in that system.
Right.
And the good news is that there is a way of giving everyone a win. The risk is not as big as we think it is, because it's offset by the size of the opportunity.
Yeah.
The global smart farming market is expected to reach $34 billion by 2029.
Absolutely.
In this region.
That's
so
what we should also be willing to see. Yeah. Thank you.
It's putting the solution together and making sure that renewable energy transition is done so within the context of other contributors to emissions. It can't be done on its own. It has to be done as part of a food system approach.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much for shedding light on that as well. I want to go to the... Abdul, you're already standing somewhere with the microphone. I was saying indeed, are there any more questions?
Yeah. Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Very enlightening and very delightful exchanges are happening. I'm very happy to be here. My name is Ashish Vaishnav. I come from India.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm with a company, which is in the agri space and trying to get into the innovative solution mode around cooling for the agri sector. Renewable energy, unfortunately, again, means only power, as we can see here. But when we are talking agri, I think this is the best example where we have to bring in the bioenergy part of it, which is very much a creation of this sector.
Right.
And most of it is agro-residue.
And
so
what is
how
your
does
question?
agro-residue come into play for bringing in solutions for the agri sector? One, you would see tomorrow, we are doing a company, New Leaf. We are using biomass, which is the agro residue, to actually do the cooling and not use power.
Right.
Now you will notice that as soon as you get into cooling, the stake of power becomes much, much higher because you need 24/7. It's not lighting power.
Yeah, and what would be your question for the panel?
Is that why our solutions which we are discussing doesn't bring in bioenergy as a solution, especially for developing countries where bringing up, and the other part is
maybe we can park it here because we're a little short on time. I see Christina.
A relevant point in this is the paddy straw she mentioned. If you have been following India lately, paddy straw is being burned, but now paddy straw is being harnessed into bio-CNG, which can change the entire equation of the entire thing. Thank you so much.
I don't think this is exclusive of bioenergy, so I think that's all we need to say about that. So yeah, it's definitely part of the strategy, all of the above, anything that isn't fossil fuels, I think is the point.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Is there another question from the audience? Because I'd like to take some more. There's one there all the way to the right. Thanks, Abdul. And we can go through some more of them.
Hi, I'm Sejal from Urja Development Solutions Limited. We basically work in providing pay-per-use irrigation services, solar-based irrigation services to the farmers. While we all are talking about making technologies accessible, the financing part of it, our model is not dependent upon the farmer owning an asset, but using it as per their whatever quantity of water they consume, they pay for it. So don't you think that it's the model that needs to innovate, in which business model basically, not just technology, in which we operate? Because that is going to make it accessible to the smallholder farmers or to the irrigation system, or boosting the agricultural productivity in a much more easy manner, efficient manner. So my question is, how should we not focusing on just innovating the business model as well while we are talking about technologies? Because that will somewhere solve the financing problem we are talking about.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, it's the business model that needs to change instead of just finding techno fixes. Okay.
I mean, are you suggesting pay as you go? That's what you're suggesting?
This is a bit different from pay as you go model. So the ownership lies with the company of the asset. And they just pay for the quantity of water or for the quantity they're using. So the ownership resides with the company. The farmer doesn't have to worry about the installation costs, the maintenance costs. All that is with the company. The ownership doesn't change.
I would practically say any business model, as long as it works. And the trouble exactly with renewable energies and also with technology in the agro sector is it's capex intense, and the capital is simply not there. Whether you pre-finance, whether you lease, whether you have as you pay as you go, or service models, all of that is fine. What is necessary to cluster it into, let's say, also transactionally efficient, terrible word, let's say products. So it needs to be easy to roll it out in large scale, and it needs to be easy to understand. It's both by the people that finance it and by the people that actually use it. It needs to be a value-creating service that instantly, let's say, gets the appreciation of the user.
Right. I see, Kande, that you want to respond.
Well, there's something else UNIDO did years ago, and I don't know if it still works. We can look at South-South cooperation. I mean, years ago, UNIDO, you were supporting SICEM in Egypt. You know, SICEM already was using drip irrigation. Yeah? So solar-powered drip irrigation instead of the flooding that indeed some of us are doing now. So that already puts in water efficiency right on the table. But SICEM was going beyond that. They were using the rice straws. In Egypt, they pioneered using rice straws for organic production. Of course, suddenly the farmers became smart that you can now pay us for our waste. We don't burn it. But I remember when I was leaving UNIDO, what SICEM was going to do now was to get climate finance for their 3,000 outgrowers. But as an aggregator, they could get certification and use the climate funds to support their 3,000 growers. So you need sometimes an aggregator, a big farmer, that works with the small farmers, that can in fact help them with the new technology, the new varieties, the better use for water and solar, but also maybe attract climate finance. I don't know if that exists still in UNIDO, but I remember at that time it was super innovative. And CChem is a big international brand, but they were reaching out to growers to also help them qualify for climate finance and using the straw as a source of fertilizer.
That's interesting indeed. Thank you also for bringing in that example. I think it makes it very tangible and concrete. Thank you for your questions also. Now, I'm just thinking, and I've been listening so far because we are unfortunately almost at the end, but not yet, so we can still have a little bit of a conversation. So much has been mentioned about finance. And yes, we've also been speaking about business models a little bit. We've also been speaking about what we base our investments decisions off, so sort of almost the rules of our financial system that we operate in. Does it only put value on financial value, or do we include social value, environmental value, natural capital that we create? I am a little curious to see what the room thinks. So maybe what I want to do, also to oil those knees, but that's maybe to solar power your knees. I thought I'm going to read out a statement, and if you agree with it, you may stand up. That's a moment to just stretch those legs. If you disagree, you remain seated, so know that you are always saying something. That's the nice thing about this game. If you're really nuanced, you can do this, but I tell you, you have to have very good leg muscles to do that, so I would be impressed if you can. But I'm curious to think, who thinks that financing is the biggest bottleneck? Investments, finance is the biggest bottleneck that is blocking, in a way, this transition that we need to make in the agri-food business to renewables. You may stand. And there they go. Oh, yeah, please. Okay, so, but the interesting thing is, there are people, everybody freeze, by the way. Now I got you, because now you're frozen. Abdul, where are you with that microphone? I want to hear from some people, because some people decided to remain seated as well. I see these two gentlemen here. Maybe, why are you seated down? Would you like to share? He's a banker.
I wish.
Because he's a banker.
No, that's the UNIDO team, so that's why we didn't want to be biased. But I guess we have to dig deeper than this. I mean, the money's there, the finance there. I think there's maybe some micro bottlenecks that we need to dig and find. I will not go through more details.
Do you know some?
I think honesty was mentioned by Mr. Yom Kella. I think, being honest as well, and there's some values across any system like the financing system is still missing. Yeah,
that's a good point. Anybody else that agrees with this? Somebody that also was still... But you were standing, sir, right?
Everybody sat down, so...
Oh, now everybody's sitting.
My name is Siri Abdul Jallo. I'm actually the CEO of Voltaris Africa, company that Cornelis is financing.
So you agree that financing is the most important role?
It's the most important bottleneck, but the gentleman is right about one thing, is lack of capacity sometimes to develop projects and package them in a way that financiers can actually feel comfortable supporting.
And when you say capacity, can you make that a little more concrete?
It's capacity across the board, from government stakeholders to small and medium enterprises. Sometimes it's about supporting them to have that capacity to build projects that, I don't like the word bankable, but that are deemed bankable. So in Voltaris, we try to also
focus on increasing that capacity.
Work with aggregators. That solves sometimes that capacity issue. Because the aggregator usually is attuned with developing projects.
Thanks. Thank you also for sharing that perspective. And thanks, Abdul, by the way, the entire time for bringing that microphone around. Thank you so much for participating in my game. Did anybody do the halfway sit? Because then I'm just going to say thank you, because you did a little exercise for yourself. We are, I think, like a minute away of the end of this, so that no pressure for you guys, but I still do want to just go by you. This is dangerous to do. We are actually almost out of time. But if you would have to say in 2 words or one, the very short, the one thing that each and everyone in this room should do when they go back to their works after they leave this forum, what can they do to help and better bring this nexus about, if you would have to say it in 1 word? No pressure, but Cornelius, you are sitting on my left.
I go first. I think we should all look forward to capital.
There's many words.
We should look forward to capital moving from north to south, because this is what's going to happen.
Okay, a sentence, I think that's okay. I'll allow a sentence. Thank you also, I think that's a good one.
Share what you learned.
Thank you, Cristina. Kande.
Design good projects backed by good policy.
Ooh, I like that.
Good policy and bring people with you.
I like that as well. And Beverly?
Be intolerant of silos.
Ooh. Wow, can I have a big round of applause for the most succinct panel ever? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate this. Now, unfortunately, I should say, all great things do come to an end. Can I truly say that it was a pleasure to sit here together? I think the openness and honesty with which you spoke, and I think it truly seeps through in everything that you say for each and every one of you, that you truly feel and live this by heart. And I think that goes to show. I think this was an incredible session. The gentleman here, thank you for what you triggered. Just by asking one question, I think we've got a deal out of this session, so that is great. Thank you to you here, our audience, for engaging with us.